The Green Sheet is a financial publication of the MWRA Advisory Board. The July installment takes a trip down memory lane in regards to the creation of the 5-year CIP spending cap, which started in FY04. The evolution of the cap can be traced to the very beginning when a lawsuit led to the creation of the MWRA, resulting in various court-ordered capital projects, namely the Boston Harbor cleanup, which encompassed the construction of the Deer Island treatment plant, and also the CSO control program, which is just now approaching completion. As a result of the court-ordered projects, billions of dollars were spent, resulting in long-term borrowing and a significant impact on ratepayers. Due to the burden on ratepayers, the advisory board fought for a change to the way capital spending was handled, and in 2003 the authority established a 5-year spending cap to mitigate rate increases for its member communities. In short, capital spending has a delayed impact on the ratepayer because long-term borrowing is used to pay for the majority of the CIP, which is then paid off each year in principal and interest payments known as debt service. In the early days of the authority's capital spending, it cost an average of $3 in principal and interest for every $1 borrowed. Though the interest rate environment has significantly improved for borrowers since then, the lesson has been learned that managing rates requires managing capital spending. Now let's review that historical spending. This chart tracks the 15 years of capital expenditures leading up to the creation of the 5-year cap and the fast and steady increase in spending until the peak of fiscal year 94, with $604 million spent in that year alone. In this 15-year period from 89 to 03, over $5.9 billion was spent on capital improvements, the vast majority of which were court-ordered, an average of $393.5 million per year in spending. We'll return to this chart later, adding the most recent 10 years for comparison. Though capital spending sped out of control in the 80s and 90s, various types of CIP spending caps were previously in use, eventually leading to a rolling cap in the early 2000s. But the rolling cap simply helped to project and track capital spending, which was necessary and helpful, but failed to actually curb spending. This is why a hard cap, meaning an actual spending limit, was the only viable answer to the problem. The hard cap led to a number of positive outcomes. It helped the authority create a comprehensive master plan in 2006. It actively controls spending with a 5-year limit that cannot be exceeded, and it demands a higher level of prioritization for projects which are forced to fit within a baseline cap. This table shows how the baseline cap works in a nutshell. The cap projects the next 5 years of spending in terms of estimated project cost for each year in today's dollars, meaning the cost of the project at the time that the cap is created, factoring in contingency costs based on external factors surrounding those projects, and also adding inflation assumptions to projects that may or may not be awarded until the end of the 5-year cap period. Finally, the cost of projects in the CVA communities are backed out because those projects are paid for entirely by those communities. The authority strives to fall within 20% plus or minus of the baseline cap figure for each year, though this is often difficult. The total for the first 5-year cap was over $1.13 billion, and the authority has now successfully cycled through 2 cap periods, which provides excellent data for an analysis. Let's take a look. The bars in blue show the baseline cap figures for each year of the past 2 cap periods. The red dots show the actual capital spending in each of those fiscal years. For the FY04 through 08 cap period, the baseline cap was set at $1.13 billion, and the actual spending was $889 million. For the next cap period, the baseline cap was roughly the same, and the actual spending was $825 million. Looking at the cap periods as a whole for a simpler view shows that not only was the FY04 through 08 cap underspent, the FY09 through 13 cap period was even more underspent. So at the urging of the advisory board, the current fiscal year 14 through 18 cap period was reduced by $350 million to a $792 million baseline cap. Returning now to the graph from earlier, the ratepayer can see a much sunnier view. As stated, the 15 years prior to the first 5-year cap averaged $393.5 million of capital spending per year, but with the completion of many court-ordered projects and the implementation of the 5-year cap, the average spending dropped to $178 million from FY04 through 08 and to $165 million from FY09 through 13. Looking ahead, the authority has reached a tipping point in more ways than one. Of the capital spending through fiscal year 13, nearly 80% was court-ordered, but as Massachusetts enjoys the economic development surrounding a clean Boston Harbor, the CSO program will also reach completion by the end of calendar year 15. So from an organizational perspective, future capital costs will focus on asset protection and system redundancy initiatives. Perhaps the most important tipping point, though, is the debt service side of things. As stated, changes in capital spending have a delayed effect on the ratepayer. As capital spending and subsequent borrowing decline and more principal is paid off, the authority pays less and less in interest, eventually seeing reductions in the budget. While this cap structure may have room for improvement, through 2 cycles it has proven to be an effective mechanism for controlling capital spending and prioritizing capital projects, and only small tweaks should be necessary from here on out. 2 recent tweaks are prime examples. First was a change to the contingency calculation in the baseline cap, which was ironed out and actually reduced, and most recently, in the fiscal year 15 CIP budget process, the authority accepted the Advisory Board's recommendation to remove local assistance programs from the baseline cap. Both of these are seen as enhancements to a system that has already been greatly improved. If you have any questions or would like any more information, please visit our website at www.mwraadvisoryboard.com.